All good?
All good.
Well, Digger, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited to talk to you.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be here.
Good. Well, thank you. I mean, today we're going to attempt to answer probably one of life's biggest questions, which is, what happens after you die? And I think maybe in the book that you've written and we've got here, you've got some evidence of a higher realm. And I'm really excited. Once I got hold of the book, my wife actually stole it from me. So she had a good read before I was able to get my hands on it. And it was just enthralling. There's just so much in here. It's so interesting, and it really got me gripped. And I'm really excited today to be able to talk through what led you to writing the book and kind of where the inspiration came from. So maybe you can give us some background. Where did this all come from?
I must say I've always been interested in spirituality and spiritualism, and I'd had kind of experiences throughout my life that I'd sort of put down to being, perhaps my imagination, or just basically just dismissed. And that was a bit of a fault, really, because I kind of is interested in spirituality and what are we here for? Interested me. I always felt it was someone else. Other people were mediums, or other people had these experiences. I tended to feel like I was just an observer. But it wasn't until I came to write the book and itemise, if you like, these experiences over a lifetime that I realised that, well, actually, there is something here that is actually, personal to me. Although I absolutely believe that these things are for all of us. We all have these experiences, and I think probably most people do the same. We dismiss these things as imagination, or perhaps we're embarrassed or afraid what other people might think or say, so we keep it to ourselves and forget about it. But
I think some of your experiences go back to when you were much younger, right? So you had kind of these experiences and coincidences or events that happened, which later on in your life became more meaningful. What was those first kind of few experiences that you had, which you thought, oh, there's something different happening here?
Well, I think the first real major period was during my 20s, from nearly all of my 20s actually, when I didn't realise what it was. I'd had a friend that who was killed on a motorbike. Basically, he'd had an accident and he was killed. And I heard about it indirectly. It was a few months later that I'd heard about his passing. And obviously I was very saddened by it. Particularly when you're 19, 20, you kind of feel like you're immortal anyway. So it's difficult to accept that people of your age have passed. And I made a special effort to find out where he was buried and go to his grave to give my respects, which in hindsight I think was the beginning of those experiences, because from then on I would have strange, not all the time, but on occasion I would hear things, footsteps. He used to wear patchouli oil, which he was renowned for, and you could smell it. You could smell it when there was no reason to smell it. There was, but the worst things about it were, unbeknown to me, I didn't know what it was. But I would have these experiences where I would have these terrible, dreadful feelings come over me. I'd feel really horrible and really angry and frustrated for no good reason. I absolutely didn't know why.
So with the experience with your friend, so I know you had, how did that progress? Because I think you did you have a reading done or something? And there was what happened there? Because just to close off that story, because I think this is a really important part of why you then started becoming really interested to learn further around what was happening. So what happened then with your friend?
Well, absolutely. I mean, this went on for a period of 7 or 8 years. It was a long time, and as I said, I mentioned that I'd hear footsteps, but it wasn't just. I was with my partner at the time, and we were in bed asleep, and I could hear these footsteps outside the front door that were so loud that I genuinely felt someone was going to break the door down. I really thought something was going on. And I woke my partner up and asked her, you know, who do you think that is? And she couldn't hear it, which astonished me. I just couldn't. What do you mean you can't hear it? You know. Anyway, I kind of I started to get involved in spiritualism quite deeply at that point, and I met an elderly lady who was a medium, and she said to me, she said, do you? It was during a reading. She said to me, do you have feelings that you can't explain sometimes? She said, you like dark moods will come across you, and at the time I said no. I've been so used to these things over such a period, I didn't even sort of take any notice of it any longer. And it wasn't until after the reading I realised, I thought, oh, yes, I do. I know exactly what you're talking about. Why didn't I say it? So I contacted her again, and I said to her about it, and she said yes. She said, well, the reason that is, she said, because you have someone that you know who was killed on a motorbike, and he realises that you're sensitive. He didn't want to die. He wasn't ready to die, and he's attached himself to you in order to kind of live his life through you. And the feelings that you're having are how he's feeling. And I mean, it was so strange. He used to have acne quite severely, and I could feel it on my face. I didn't have it, but I could feel like his skin complexion on my. It was horrible, you know. It was quite an unpleasant experience.
And just for clarification, so this medium that you went to, she would have had no idea about what would have happened in your.
Absolutely,
because that's a very specific thing for her to say, which is, you know, a person, something on a motorbike. I mean, it's so specific.
Absolutely, it was completely accurate what she was saying, and but that wasn't the end of it, because as much as I wasn't expecting that. I didn't go for a reading expecting anything like that. It kind of took me by surprise. Which when I reflect back on it, I think, well, you know, I must be a bit dense really, because you know that should have been. I should have been, but I got so used to it over that long period of time. You know, it was just, I just accepted it as part of me, really.
Did you just think these were just odd coincidences, or just maybe part of your, like you said, part of your imagination? Like you didn't really read too much into it? Because I imagine everyone gets these experiences somehow.
Well, like I say, I kind of just dismissed it. I just couldn't explain it or rationalise it to myself, so I just dismissed it. I just would put it out of my mind. Although I would constantly hear footsteps, constantly. And I would just, you know, I just didn't know. I worked with machinery and things. I thought perhaps it was, you know, just something to do with that. But as a result of that reading, which sort of kind of shook me, to be quite honest, at the time, because it made sense when the penny dropped. It made sense. I thought, well, that does explain a lot of things. But anyway, it was a few weeks or months later, I can't remember now, but you know, around that time. I can remember having this experience again with this intense, horrible feeling, and by now I'd realised, well, it's not me. It feels like me, but now I understand that it isn't me. This is something else. This is, you know, I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's not me. Anyway, I went to the. I realised that the spiritualist church was open that afternoon for spiritual healing. And I thought, well, actually, I'll go there. I will go there now, and I will, you know, try healing. Anyway, I went to the church, and I walked through the door. It was summer, I think. The doors were open, and the lady that was doing the healing, she had her back to me, and I went and sat down. She was healing someone, and there was just me and her and this other chap. She was doing the healing. She finished her healing session with this chap, and he went, and she turned to me and she said, "Have you been messing with the occult?" And I snapped at her. I was rude, and it shocked myself. I'm not that sort of person. I'm not, you know. It shocked myself that I spoke to her like, "No, I'm not," sort of kind of thing. Job not to swear, you know. And she said to me, "I think you better come and sit down on the healing." So I sat down and she started her healing. And I've seen her do it before, and she, to be quite honest, you wouldn't think she was doing anything. It was just all very quiet and stuff, and very serene. Anyway, but I'm sat there, and she's behind me, and she starts making these sort of noises, and I'm sort of quite bemused by what's going on. Anyway, when she finished, or during the session, she said to me, she said, "You know someone who's been killed on a motorbike, don't you?"
Wow. So she said it as well.
She told me exactly the same story, completely independent of this other woman. It said no, there was no. Of course, this convinced me. I thought, well, this is evidence, personal evidence.
Definite
that this
evidence,
is
yeah.
And she said to me, he's not going. He doesn't want to go. He's, you know, she's saying his guides keep coming for him, and he's sort of in this in between world. He's passed over, but he doesn't want to go over, and he's attached himself to you. He's trying to live his life through you. Exactly the same story as that I've been told a few weeks or months before by someone completely independent. And I just thought, well, I know this is, you know, this has to be correct.
Before all these things had happened, were you quite skeptical? So it sounds like you were interested to research it, and you wanted to know kind of more about this world, if there's another world, what happens after death, if this world is infinite, whatever it is. It sounds like that was a natural interest, so therefore you're a bit more open to it. But were you a bit skeptical going into some of this?
Well, I've always liked to consider myself, you know, sort of reasonable and rational, and but open-minded. You know, I've always thought there must be some source to life just by looking at nature. You know, the intelligence within nature has always made me think that, well, there must be a creative force that just has to. That's my opinion. But when it comes to religion, that's a different matter. I've studied different religions, you know, open-mindedly, just to see what they're all about. But I've always put off when the fear-based persuasion comes into it, you know.
And this is quite different to that, I think.
Absolutely,
this is definitely different to that.
Absolutely, sure. It's I tend to think of it as spiritual but not religious. Is my sort of approach to it.
So after then, you had these two experiences, and they both pointed at your friend who was killed on the motorbike. Then I suppose some of that skepticism has gone away, because you're now thinking there's something here. Because how could these coincidences have happened if there wasn't something?
Absolutely, that's right. And prior to that, it was around that time, but it was, you know, a few months before that, I'd had an operation. It was nothing minor. It was nothing serious. It was quite minor. And I was in hospital over the Christmas period, and I can remember they used to have mixed wards in those days, and on the opposite side of the ward there were elderly patients, obviously at the point of dying, and but they were in such a terrible, sad way. You know, they were unable to feed themselves or dress themselves, and couldn't recognise their family, and it had a major impact on me, a really powerful impact on me, because you know, we all go through things in life that, you know, and I think perhaps this is really why I had to answer your question, is why I had such an interest in this. You know, if we go through all these things, you know, is there any point in us going through these things that we go through, or what? And it was very much seeing these elderly people at that point in their life who, you know, if there was nothing after and they were going to die, what is the point? What is the point? And I really, 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 it really affected me deeply. That, you know, I was very angry. You know, I just thought, well, if you go through all this in life to end up like that, you know, what is the point of it? What is the point of it? If, you know, if everything that we go through in life, not just bad things, but, you know, everything in the end is for nothing, then what is the point? And it impacted me deeply. And I found myself inwardly kind of crying out to, if there's someone there, I want to know, is there something after? I don't want to be told believe this or go to hell. I want to know the truth about these things, just the truth, not the conditions. You have to believe it under. Just what is the truth? And it was after that things started happening. Not long after that, I was laid on the couch listening to music, and I was intensely listening to music. One of those things where you're actually really, in those days, I was very much into the latest stereos and that kind of thing. And I was intensely listening to the music, and I turned over from my side onto my back, and as I did so, I just drifted out of my body, just drifted out of my body, and I was conscious of the fact that I wasn't in my body anymore, but I was also aware that I didn't have a body. And this I found this very. I'd read about people having these experiences, and they talked about their astral bodies, this, that, and the other. But it became very apparent to me that I was just there. I was just consciousness, but I wasn't separate from anything. Everything that was in the room that I was in felt like it was inside me, and I felt like I was inside it. It was just, I was pure consciousness. I was consciousness. I was the awareness, and it kind of showed me that, this is what we are. We're not our bodies. We're not our minds. These are things that we have. What we are is this consciousness, this I am awareness, which when you look at religions is what they all are saying. When you get behind all the sort of literal translations and stories, they're talking about is consciousness. That's what we are. There is only one thing, and we're all a part of it. We exist individually, but we are all part of this one consciousness. There's just one thing. And then, I was kind of a bit freaked out by it, and I was sort of instantly drawn back into my body. It was only a short experience, but it was enough to realise that, there is a non-physical reality. There is a non-physical dimension. And I think that was the point that led me to get into the spiritualism.
So from that, then you started researching it further?
Yes.
And it was that, I know you read heavily. So was that through looking at the history? Was it through looking at books? Was it looking? Because I know we talk about Ouija boards as we progress, but it was.
Yeah.
Where did all of that
very much
come from?
I did join a what they call a circle at the church, where people have their they attempt to develop their psychic abilities and stuff, which was quite interesting. But I wasn't really particularly. I didn't do it for very long. I don't know what happened, but I was, as you say, I was very interested in reading the what it was about. People who attend spiritist churches very often they get a message which may or may not, give them evidence that they're looking for or the comfort they're looking for. In some cases, it does, but for me, that didn't particularly appeal. It was interesting, but. Pardon me. At that time, I was still young. I didn't really know many people that had passed away anyway. So perhaps for that reason, I wasn't really interested in getting the messages. But the lady that gave me the information about, the first lady that gave me the information about my friend who had passed away on the motorbike, she gave me a book called Guidance from Silver Birch. And this book was written in 1936, I think, which at the time felt to me like it was forever. Ago, and it was written by it was a chap named, it was the Hannin Swaffer. Now Hannin Swaffer, he was a Fleet Street journalist. He was and the book was written through information received via trance through the medium Morris Barbanel. Morris Barbanel was the editor of Psychic News magazine, and he would print this information, but he wouldn't print it under his own name. It was all kept sort of anonymous because he didn't want any sort of anyone to realise it was him. He just wanted it to stand on its own merits, And anyway, that was the first book I read, Guidance from Silver Birch, and I've never been touched by anything so much in my entire life. For the first time, life began to make sense to me. It explained it all appealed to reason and logic, and there are no thou shalt nots, or it's certainly not religious. However, it went into how life works. It's all natural laws, and how God is made manifest in natural laws is how they describe it. Which is, to me, everything does work according to principles.
Well, when you say it was all reasonable and logical, what sort of examples are there? What was written in that book that really resonated with you?
Well, I think God, for a start, isn't the one with the sort of beard and the lightning bolts and that kind. It's not about that sort of thing. It's not. But it does talk. It's basically that about its consciousness. And I think what it was that within all of us, within every single human being, we're whatever the divine source of life is within all of us. And the way Silver Birch describes it is that within all of us, we are all imbued with a divine spark. We have a spark of divinity within all of us, and that it's these experiences that we have through our life is what enables this spark to grow. And so it began to make sense why we go through these things. These things that are happening to us are for our own spiritual growth and development, and that life is eternal. It's not where the physical is it is a wonderful thing, and but it's only part of what we are. We are kind of an extension of source energy, and we're here, and we forget what we are in order to basically test ourselves. If we knew how highly we are created and where we came from, we wouldn't want to be in this environment. We couldn't cope with it because we come from a much broader dimension kind of thing. But we're here in order to. I always say there's a difference between knowing and doing. We can know these things inwardly, but until we actually experience ourselves in that situation, we don't know how we would respond to it. And that's basically it. These things like forgiveness, and for example, I think perhaps all religions talk about love, and that really is the essence of life. It is really truly about love, but it's easy to love something when it's easy to love it. When to love something when it's difficult is the real test. And I think it just put life in perspective for me. I really found that it made sense that these things we go through do have a purpose, and we're not going to be able to understand everything. But because there is something after this, which by this point I'd accepted, it may I realised that we're not going to know everything. I don't know everything about all of this stuff, but I know enough to realise that the answers are at the end. What I don't know now, I will know, and to have faith. And that was a big thing for me, was to realise that to be happy, you have to have faith in something. You just have to have faith in something. That's there is, and also that it made me realise there is something greater than us. There is something greater than us, and I guess that's my journey went on from there. Really.
Yeah, I've got you. It's exciting so far. I mean, it's very comforting to think there might be something, and I suppose really what we're going to discuss now is really the evidence. And in your book, My Kind of Angels, so I'll read the title: My Kind of Angels, Evidence of a Higher Realm. And in this book is where the evidence is. So it sounds like you discovered the other book, and that's maybe giving you some inspiration to start writing down some of your experiences. How did that then transpire into
Well, yeah.
into writing?
Well, there was a sort of long gap between that stage and, you know, sort of best part of 30 years, I suppose.
Okay.
It's a long time
Yeah.
between that and when yes, it was, because and I was I always would pride myself on being a rational, reasonable person, and I would accept what I considered reality to be reality, and I felt a responsibility to do what I needed to do as a responsible person, and I kind of kept things in a box. I kind of kept sort of spirituality in one box and material life in another box, thinking that, you know, that's how it was. You know, that's when you die, that's where you go to. When you're here, this is what you have to do. But as you said, I've always been a voracious reader, and I'm very interested in reading it. And I read countless books on spirituality. Very interested in spiritualism, the history of spiritualism, the people that were involved with it, eminent people like Sir Oliver Lodge, invented the spark plug, radio speakers, Conan Doyle, Arthur Conan Doyle, you know, the author of Sherlock Holmes, and many, many, many more. And in fact, I was turned on to a chap called J. Arthur Finlay on the edge of the Etheric. He was a magistrate, stockbroker. All these people in their day were eminent people. They weren't just, you know, sort of people who claimed to be mediums and fortune tellers and stuff. They were eminent people that were very interested in the subject, and you know, they wrote knowledgeably about it. One person in particular, which is I would recommend anyone look into, was Leslie Flint. There was an incredible medium. He was tested in so many ways. He was able to produce ectoplasm, as they call it, but out of this ectoplasm, the spirit world were able to form it into a voice box, which they could speak through to the people that were in the sittings, and they'd have conversations with each other. And but the astonishing thing about Leslie Flint was he was able to speak to them as well. He was independent from the voice box, so he would be wide awake talking, and it was incredible. And he was tested. Well, I think he's just described himself as the most tested medium ever. Like, you know, and he would give demonstrations to thousands of people, like Albert Hall, places, you know, of that sort of size. So, you know, it became obvious to me. This stuff's, you know, how come this isn't, you know, more sort of accepted? Because it's obvious, you know, when you look into it. There's so much, at least circumstantial evidence. I mean, you know. Anyway, it was something that interested me for all my adult life. I was very much interested in it and studied it deeply. Another books started to come out as well around that time. One series of books, Neil Donald Walsh, I would definitely recommend, although they're slightly dated now because of the period they were written in, but Conversations with God. Now, I was put off that reading that book for some time just because of that title. You know, I kind of felt like it was going to be a fire and brimstone type thing. However, they were astonishing books, and I definitely recommend it. And it was interesting because this being that he was having the conversation with didn't claim to be God. You know, he felt that. But it seemed to be like a kind of higher level of consciousness. He seemed, which is, people speak of their higher selves or their inner being or something, and there definitely is within us. We definitely have higher levels of consciousness, and these books was written from that perspective, and they're very interesting and highly recommended. But I had my own personal experience of that again around this same sort of time when I became aware of this entity that had attached itself to me, and I became interested in binaural beats meditation. I've always been kind of one for, you know, sort of gadgets and things, and I bought a meditation machine. I still use them to this day, and when I first used it, I hadn't been using it long, and I remember laying on the bed one afternoon, just you just lay there relaxing, not thinking anything particular, and all of a sudden, I had a strange feeling like I've never had before. It started in my solar plexus and it exploded through every cell in my being. I can't. There's not words to describe it really. The closest I can come to is like a spiritual orgasm. But anyway, this feeling was incredible. It was just like, I mean, I could understand why someone would say they've been touched by God or something. I'm not saying that, but it was that kind of so powerful, but at the same so lovely. You know, it was a really lovely feeling, and it condensed. That feeling kind of condensed into my own voice in my head, which said, "What you think is what is real." And I knew that although it came from my conscious mind in the end, it didn't originate from my normal level of consciousness. I became aware that there is within us, not only are we, do we have these astral bodies and we go on, and there within us, there is this higher level of consciousness within us. It is a separate level of consciousness, like what I can only describe as like a perfected self that we all have, all of us. We all have this God self, for want of a better description, that, and it is within all of us. We all have this, we are so much more than we realise, and it's there for us to connect with. It is there for us to connect with, and this is kind of what this purpose is of, because it's interesting in his life after death is, and it is absolutely fascinating, and it is comforting, and it is something that we do need to know. But having accepted that for myself, the first thought that come to mind are the implications of that. What are the implications of that? Then it changes everything. It absolutely changes everything about life, and it's connected to that inner being, this higher level of consciousness. We are here to evolve spiritually, which means becoming more aware, evolving our consciousness, growing. That is our evolution. Anyway, that did go on for a number of years, and it got to the point where, like I said, I would keep things in boxes: spirituality, material life. And I was going through a difficult period financially. I worked for myself. I was in the construction, and it was a very difficult period. I was struggling financially, and I was worried about money, constantly worried about money. And as I say, this is years after these experiences, although I was still very much part of my life, and I definitely feel that, it's very important because of this. Although we exist individually, we all have this inner being, and we're all part of the same thing, kind of like light bulbs are like vessels for electricity. We are like the light bulbs. We are all individuals, but the electricity is universal. And so I was aware that, how we are to each other. That, in fact, I still consider that when we do pass on, the most important thing to us will be, how do we treat each other? That is going to be what's the most significant part of life, is how do we treat each other? What that is where our spiritual development is tested, in how we are to each other. And so I kind of lived like that, and I didn't really sort of put too much emphasis on anything else. I would continue living as normally. But as I say, I got to the point where I was struggling in life materially. I wasn't earning enough money to get by, and I was constantly worried, and I would be getting. I remember I broke my foot. I had kidney stones. Nothing, sort of drastic, but it kind of felt like I was, I just couldn't progress. I couldn't progress. And I did get, and I will be honest, I got to the point with about 9 months or so before I was called to write that book, which was the only way to describe it. Prior to writing that book, I literally wouldn't even write a shopping list. I'm not, I wasn't a kind of natural writer, really. But anyway, I got to the point where, like I say, I kind of felt that all these things were happening. It felt like life was stopping me carrying on the way I was carrying on, worrying about things, trying to, keep, as I said, I worked for myself, and I was constantly trying to get jobs and constantly worried about getting paid. And and that's just how my mindset was. I was thinking negatively all the time, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Really, the more I worried about things, the more I had reason to worry, kind of thing. And I broke my foot getting up off the sofa, of all things, and it really felt I couldn't do anything. I just couldn't. There was no point in worrying about anything at that point, because I couldn't go to work. I couldn't do things. I just had to accept my fate, kind of thing. And I sort of realised that this is to stop you. You've got to change. You can't. You've got to. Anyway, I did sort of recover from that for a while, and I went back to work. And shortly after that, I had the experience that was the catalyst for change. I was at work one day, and it was kind of like being in a video game. It was surreal. I think I was doing something outside, and a bird within 20 yards or something close to me. I saw this bird, a crow, chase this young blackbird down onto the pavement. And the crow flew away, and this little young blackbird, was on the pavement there, and it wasn't going to get up. It was struggling. It was flapping about, and I went over and picked it up. I mean, that alone I found quite strange. Like, when do you ever actually able to pick up a wild bird? And it let me. She let me pick her up, and I picked her up, and I checked her wings and her legs, and she didn't seem to be damaged physically. And I thought, well, it's the shock I expect. I was, she's, and I thought, well, there was a big planter there. I thought, well, if I put her in the middle of that planter, she'd be safe from anything. She might recover and she'd be okay. So I went to place her down into this planter, and as I lowered her down, she looked me in the eyes, and as she looked me in the eyes, she died. She just passed, and the strangest feeling that I've ever had came over me. I placed her down, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what it was. It was powerful feeling, and all I knew was I had to get away. I just had to get away, and this was a big office complex, and I went up into the roof of the building where all the air conditioning and stuff was out the way, and I walked out onto the outside of the building where I knew I could be alone and just have some time to sort of recover, really, because I was shaking. And I sat there, and I was aware. I thought to myself, someone's going to die. I just knew it. I just absolutely didn't have the words put into my head, or I just had the feeling that it was a conviction. I just absolutely knew it with no doubt whatsoever, completely certain that someone was going to die. And I phoned my sister at the time, which I'm very glad I did, because had I not done that, I would have just, by doing that, it gave evidence to myself and anyone else that these events transpired. I phoned my sister and I said, Sarah, I don't know who it's going to be, but someone close to us is going to pass away. I said, I really don't know who. I don't know anything more than that. All I know is that someone's going to pass away. Anyway, she sort of she took notice of me. I was surprised, really, but I suppose my conviction was so strong that she didn't just humour me. She did take notice. And anyway, we had a conversation, and that was that. I recovered, went back to work, and for the next sort of few days, I was still affected by it. But as the time went by, a week or two, I settled down and kind of dismissed it again, until one morning, 2 or 3 weeks after that experience, I had a phone call at work, and it was my sister in hysterics because my mum had passed away completely unexpectedly and completely suddenly. Absolutely out of the blue. Out of the blue. And I can remember saying to her, I knew it. And she said, you did. I just knew, and there was no denying it. I couldn't dismiss it from myself. I couldn't I couldn't deny it in any way, shape or form. It had happened. Well, it took quite a while. It took, and at that time, I mentioned about the blackbird that had died, but it also, during that period, there was literally birds dropping out of the sky at my feet. It was completely freaking me out. I couldn't understand what these birds were like raining out of the sky, and everywhere I'd go there would be dead birds, and I just couldn't I couldn't make out what was going on. It was all sort of very surreal, but at the same very real at the same time. And anyway, on the strength of that phone call, my sister had contacted my family. My sister lived in London, my parents live in Cornwall, and I'm in Southampton, so none of us are close together. But my sister owns a timeshare in the New Forest, which is kind of in between everyone, in the middle. And she'd been trying to rent out that timeshare. She didn't want to use it that year, and she hadn't been able to rent it out. And it's a lovely, no reason why it shouldn't have gone really, but it hadn't. And on the strength of that phone call, my sister contacted my parents because my father, who'd had a heart bypass operation several years before, she's imagined that if anyone was going to pass away, it would be him. So, perhaps it would be a good idea, instead of wasting the timeshare, they all get together. Obviously, she didn't mention that to them, but she just said, instead of wasting it, why don't we have this, which they did. So they had a lovely time. It was that summer. It was a very hot summer that year, 2018. And they had a lovely time. My sister's son was at boarding school, actually, in Lymington, which is close to where they were. My mum and dad attended, which is obviously their grandson, they attended his sports day, and it was like a particularly special time. However, it was on the third day that my mum completely unexpectedly and suddenly passed away. She had a heart attack and died, just like that. And that was, that was a terrible shock, obviously, but it occurred to me, it took me quite a while before I realised that had I not have had that experience of the premonition, the precognition, and I hadn't contacted my sister and told her about it, my mum wouldn't have seen her family for that final time, and had such a pleasant time before she passed away. And I was very emotional about that for a long time. I couldn't even think about it without getting really upset. But it kind of, I realised it was a gift. That was a gift. That was a gift. My parents and my sister and her family were able to share that time together, which they wouldn't have done. It wouldn't have happened. My mum would have passed away at home, and that would have been it. So it was a very powerful evidence to me.
And that's more than a coincidence. That's evidence.
That's what to me. Yeah,
yeah.
There's and like I say, I'd inform, and I actually wasn't the only person I'd informed someone else as well about it. But particularly the way events turned out, there you go. There's no denying it. My sister was aware of what I had before anything had occurred, and so as far as I'm concerned, yes, absolutely 100% evidence. Well, it was around that time, of course, you're in a state of shock when these things happen. We all suffer bereavements. We all, it's part of life It's inevitable. We're all going to pass away. And this is why this information is so important, because we tend to live our lives like we're not going to die. You know, we just ignore it. Like, I always call death as the last taboo. In this day and age, you know, we can talk about anything goes. There's no research, which is all fine, but death is the last one. That's the one that we don't want to talk about. We still don't want to talk about it. But I'm fortunate in that regard, because like I said, I'm kind of driven as to, is there anything after it? I did really seriously want to know about it. Anyway, as I was saying, that after that time, I kept hearing, like we get tunes in our head that are stuck there, and I kept hearing that ABBA song that I believe in angels. I have a dream, I think it's called, isn't it? I'm of the same sort of generation that when ABBA were in their heyday, I was young, and it wasn't cool in my day to like ABBA, and I never particularly did like them, although my view on them has changed a lot. But it kept surprising me why I had this tune in my head all the time, this I believe in angels, I believe in angels. It kept playing in my head. I remember even saying when my sister came down for a visit or something after my mum passed, and I said to her, I keep getting this tune in my head, and I said, I just wonder if it's perhaps mum letting me know that she's seen angels or something. I said I really don't know, but anyway, as as is normal when these things occur, you have to get in touch with people that you haven't seen for many years, and on this occasion it was my cousin. Although we were close family friends, really. My parents and her parents were close friends. We grew up together. We weren't actually related through blood, but we always used to call each other cousins and aunties and uncles and that kind of thing. So, but I hadn't seen Trudy at that time for, I think it must have been 40 years or something. It was like a real long time. But I had to let her know that my mum had passed, so I phoned her, and it was nice. We had a chat, and she said to me out of the blue, "Well, why don't you come up and stay with me?" And as I sort of said, I hadn't. I was in a situation then where I thought, I've had enough of everything. I'm just going to give it all up and start again. Give up the mortgage, give up everything, just give it all up. And I decided to do it. I just thought, well, it's a sort of leap into the dark, which is not something I'm not one of those sort of people, I kind of like things to be, know what I'm doing. But I got to the point, like I said, I felt that life had sort of got me to the point where I've just got to go with the flow now. I've tried to do it my way all these years, and I've just literally run myself into the ground. I really, without exaggerating, I was at the point of, well, I wouldn't say I was suicidal, but I was at the point where I thought, I don't really care whether I'm here or not anymore. The family's grown up, and I live on my own. It's without wanting to sound sorry for myself, I just thought, well, it's just, it wouldn't really matter now, would it? And I kind of felt like that. And I was stressed. I wasn't at the point of suicide, but I did think to myself, well, I don't really want. I remember. Well, I did say, and this is, I don't normally talk about this, but I'm going to now, because if anyone else is listening and they feel like this, just it might give them some hope. It was that, I did. As I said before, when I wanted to know about life after death, I kind of cried out to something, God or whatever that, that there's something that hears us, and there's some reason, some purpose for this. There is some greater intelligence, I'm sure. And this was another occasion where I kind of cried out from my soul, if you want me to stay, you're going to have to help me. That's, well, I remember saying it, and I meant it. I meant it. If you want me to stay, because I don't want to go on like it anymore. I've had enough of all the struggle. I've had enough of it all. I don't know. I try to do what I think is right. I try to, be a decent person, but I've kind of, I don't want, my feeling was that if the rest of my life is going to be like all my life has been previous to this. Oh, not even bad. It's just the kind of getting nowhere business. That was the kind of thing that got to me. And I've always thought, there's always people worse off than you, and you have to, that is something that you. But like I say, I got to the point where and I understand that I got myself like it. Where I got myself into a point of being completely mentally and physically exhausted. I was literally, even though I was working at that time, as I mentioned when I see the birds and stuff, I was barely able to put one foot in front of another at one point. I would literally go to sleep eating a sandwich, where I couldn't sleep at night, and I was just unable to. I was barely functioning. And when my cousin Trudy, or really my family friend Trudy, said to me, "Why don't you come and stay with me?" I just thought, well, why don't I? Why don't I? It's just why don't I? Because I'm not going to be able to carry on like this much longer anyway. And so I did. I just thought, okay, I will. And I let everything go. I let the mortgage go. I let the job go. Everything that I would have clung to normally, like we all do, because we think that's what we have to do these things. And I've been doing what I thought I'd had to for all of my life, 40 odd years as an adult at that point. I thought, well, okay, just do it. And I did. And I honestly believe that had I not done that, then I probably wouldn't be here now. I really don't. And I'm eternally grateful because I was looked after, and that, I mean, we hadn't seen each other for 40 years. It was, she didn't have to do it. I didn't ask her to do it. I didn't do anything to make it happen whatsoever. I didn't do any, and I kind of, it's like saved my life, really. I'm certain of it. I'm absolutely certain of it. Anyway, when I'd been up there just a short while, Trudy said to me, should we get a Ouija board? which I didn't really think was perhaps a good idea, but at the same time, as I said, I spent my life being, fascinated and interested in studying spirituality, so I wasn't averse to the idea, and I thought, well, okay, well,
Where did that idea come from? So why did Trudy say that? Or is it just out of the blue,
just
or is it because you both?
Out of the blue. Well, I mean, we both have similar interests. We do. So, we do have sort of interested in spirituality, that kind of thing. But it wasn't as if. I mean, I was keen on spiritualism, whereas Trudy wasn't particularly interested in it at all. In fact, she'd never been to a spiritualist church, and but she did like astrology and that kind of thing. Sort of. She had an interest in that sort of thing, but it wasn't, she, as far as I'm aware, she'd never been to a seance or anything like that. It was just completely, as far as I was aware, it was just completely out of the blue. We didn't, and as I said, I hadn't done it before, and it's kind of surprised me a little bit, really, because as I said, I'd been to circles at spiritualist churches, which is kind of a seance, really, but it hadn't occurred to me to sort of try and I looked. We're very fortunate in the time that we live with YouTube and the internet and stuff, and I'd looked into sort of looked it up on. I come across a woman on YouTube. Her name's Karen A. Dahlman, Dahlman. And she's kind of right into Ouija. She's a very intelligent woman, a therapist, and all sorts of things she's done. And her YouTube channel is about sort of her. They're actually recording them using this Ouija board, and it fascinated me really. I thought, well, this is very interesting. It's kind of like having a medium without the medium, So I thought, well, as I say, I'm open-minded. I'm prepared to try things. So we did. We bought one, sent off to Amazon, and one was delivered in a day or two. So we got it out of the box, and we had a little bit of a go with it. And to be honest, I really didn't expect anything to happen. I really wasn't expecting anything to happen. But there was a movement. There was definitely movement, and I knew I wasn't doing anything, and I was certain Trudy wasn't. I didn't have any doubts about it. It seemed to be whatever was making it move, it was moving, and there was
So let's just ask, just because I'm not that familiar. I mean, from school days, people chat about Ouija boards, all those sorts of things. But essentially, this is a board, and you've got numbers and letters written across.
Yes.
And then you use, I don't know what you use in the middle to.
Yeah, they call it a planchette.
Right. Okay.
It's a kind of just a sort of heart-shaped.
And then essentially, I suppose I mean, talk me through your process of like how does it then start to move to then you start being able to write something down, or what was that?
Yes, well, we thought we'd be sort of sensible about it. We said a kind of prayer of protection. We thought, well, I mean, I'd had experience that there is stuff that's non-physical that is around. I'd read a lot about near-death experiences and the astral realm and all the rest. So I treat it with respect. It's not something that you should take lightly, and I wouldn't recommend anyone approach it in an arrogant manner at all. Be respectful if you do it. And so we said said a prayer and asked for protection, and we just tried it. I sat opposite. With the letters were upside down to me. Trudy sat the other side. We both had one finger on there, and we didn't ask if there is anyone there, because I always kind of felt that was like, perhaps you might be inviting in something that you don't want there. You sort of kind of ask, that you're doing it for, for the highest good for all concerned, and for knowledge and for spiritual enlightenment. All the right reasons, and it kind of started moving, and at first it just didn't really come out with anything much. A few words here and there, but it was enough to encourage us that well, this is something's happening here. Let's stick to it, sort of thing. And we were doing it on a nightly basis for a couple of weeks before it started to really take off. But even so, there was still enough to keep us interested. There would be words come out or part of sentences and things. Although I wasn't mocking it. I wasn't doing it as to mock what was happening, but I kind of got a bit bored, I suppose. And all these sort of misspelled words come out, and I asked if it was this spirit was dyslexic. And the next two words that came out were "no joke."
Wow.
Which I thought, well, actually, it's time I sort of took this a bit more seriously than, because I mean, there is something, there's no doubt about it. I know that there is, and so and as from that point on, it became, I think what has to happen is a connection has to be made, and it involves energies and things that we're completely unaware of, and it takes time, and you have to be a bit persistent and open-minded, and like I say, keep everything of a high vibration. Don't whatever you do, don't get involved in it when you're drunk. You spoke earlier about from school, it's quite common for teenagers to mess with one. Well,
they're not doing it from the right level, are they?
Exactly.
Because they also wouldn't have the experience and the knowledge. Because I think what you talk about in your book is you've got to come from your higher self, so it's got to be pure, and it's got to be to seek knowledge or guidance.
Yes.
Whereas if you're a teenager doing it, you're doing it as a bit of a joke, and you're trying to contact something probably quite negative.
Exactly.
Trying to freak someone out.
Yeah.
So I think you are coming at it from a very different place without the knowledge.
It's very important, and another aspect of it is when I was a child, they would sell Ouija boards in the toy section of the club books. It was just a toy, and in 1967, the Ouija boards outsold Monopoly as a board game. So the negative view that everyone has of Ouija boards only came about after The Exorcist, the film, The Exorcist, Hollywood. That's when the Ouija board finally, got the image it has now.
Well, yeah, because people are doing it as a joke or something to play around with.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I don't know. I've never known anyone until I've met you really do it as something to really find enlightenment or evidence or communicate with an angel or communicate in any way.
Well, yeah, that's like I say, it's quite surprising that I hadn't tried it before. Really, I mean, I think I probably had the same view on it as everyone else does. You know, you don't mess with that. It's the occult. You don't mess with it, which is it pays to be cautious. So I don't encourage anyone to do anything, silly. But at the same time, as I said, it's intent. It is intent. I think that is the key. It is whatever your intention is.
And because your intent was pure.
Absolutely.
And you tested it over time. That's why you feel like you had a breakthrough?
Yeah, and also, I mean, the board itself is a bit of a creepy looking thing, and we decided after a short time to, looking at what was available, that you can get angel boards. Now we'd established communication with angels on the Ouija board, so it wasn't the board. It's just a tool, really. It's just I have no idea how they work, absolutely none at all. But it's just a tool. Whether it's something, it's just a divination tool. You could make your own, or you could buy one. But we found an angel board by a lady called Anne Stokes. She's an artist, and one of her things she makes is a angel board. They're only cheap, they're available, but it's lovely. Much nicer vibration kind of thing. So we got one of those, and it made the whole thing a lot more lighter, really. It kind of, and that's in the communications that we had initially with the angels. They said that you don't need to. We don't need to be. We are of the light. You don't need to do this in darkness, and it was all very reassuring. And it's, I don't get me wrong. I didn't know what I was dealing with either. Especially in the first place. I thought, this could be anything or anybody, but it's it can only be. You have to accept, it is for what it is. If there's nothing negative, then it has to be something of the light, and that's how it felt. Go by your feelings, kind of thing, And what was, I'm always, it's a biblical quote, I know, but it's, a tree is known by its fruit, and that's how I look at it. What was coming through was of, obviously, of a higher intelligence. That was the thing about it as well that was very obvious to me. This was a higher level of intelligence. It wasn't just it wasn't just sort of spirits, I suppose, and that was something else, because I couldn't. I was confused why they wanted me to why they kind of said that I was chosen, to do this, to write this book, and I was sort of a bit, what do you mean chosen? Chosen by who? What do you mean? And basically what they wanted me to do, is to, they said that we know that you've held such strong beliefs for such a seriously long period of time, which, as I mentioned, by this time it was 30 or 40 years that I'd been involved in this. We want you to demonstrate to the physical realm the reality of the spiritual realm. And they would say to me, well, we want you to give your wisdom. And I would be, but you're angels. They told me by this point that they were angels. Why would you want my wisdom? What do you mean? I couldn't understand why they would ask me when, if you're angels, why are you asking me? And they were saying, because we've been telling our story for millennia. Now we want you to explain why you believe what you do and stuff.
So just so I can understand, because reading through the book, the majority of the book is really focused around the actual conversations that you've had back and forth. And at the very beginning, it comes through quite formal conversations.
It is, yeah.
As the book progresses, almost as you get to know each other, you're starting to joke a little bit, and you're having a far lighter conversation.
Yeah.
So in like, if I think about the first communication, the language used isn't. I mean, it's a very intelligent language. It's a higher level of language. It's not how people always necessarily write.
No.
So I mean, did you ask a question, or how did that first communication come through for you then? Because obviously what you're talking about here is that during your conversations, you're digging, you're asking questions of why me, why this, what do you want to happen? I mean, that first kind of paragraph that comes out is quite a formal statement.
It is formal, yes, it is formal, and it's and as you say, it did. I think they do it to. I think they want to make you feel comfortable for a start. I think they want, they know that you don't know what's going, what you could be connected with anything or anyone, or if you're just making up or whatever. You really don't know what's going on. So and it's respectful as well. And I fully accepted long before I ever started doing that. The reality of the spiritual world. It was just I'd never connected with it consciously like that before. And I think it was they just done it to put me at my ease. I think they just. But it soon became apparent as we became more. And also, like I say, there's this thing that there has to be a link that has to form, and I think part of that is to do with trust. It has to be a mutual trust between each other, a mutual trust and a mutual respect, and that builds up over that period.
And as you say, it's coming from a position, the intent, which
absolutely.
And that's why you're saying you had to build a relationship for you to be able to receive the messages in the right way, and you were trying to be pure.
Yeah. And I always found them quite flattering. I always took it as flattering. They would call me their learned friend. And as I said, I've been a voracious reader all my life. As far as spirituality, and I've tried to live it. Like I say, I recommend the Silver Birch, the books to anyone who's interested in spirituality and religion and all those. I would always definitely go to the Silver Birch books, because it's everything that I've know. It's all in there. It's all in there. It's all in there. But I as I said, I didn't consider myself to be a medium. I didn't ever expect to have that direct contact with beings from another realm, and it was extraordinary. It really was the most extraordinary period in my entire life. I mean, before I went. I wrote about it in the book. I wish I didn't used to carry I only had a basic phone back in those days, but I so wish I'd had a camera phone at the time. Before I went to see a friend of mine who lived locally, and I've never seen anything like it. It wasn't just he only had a small front garden, but the whole of his garden and the neighbours' gardens, both directions up the road, were covered in feathers. I have never seen anything like it in my entire life. Of course, that's one of the symbols that angels ask you to look for. Ask for feathers, and they'll give you. And I mean, it was absolutely like a carpet, like it was snowing. It was literally covered in feathers all the way up the street in both directions.
So you've been during your conversations, you'd asked for some level of proof or a sign or something like that?
Yeah, well, I did. And it was be things like that, and songs. That was another one. That was one of the things that I'd asked for was, give me a song in my head that's related to angels or something that I'm not sort of consciously. I'm not particularly. If it had been like Robbie Williams' Angels or something, I would have thought, oh, that's me. I thought of that. And so that was one during the early stages of our conversation. That was one of the things that I'd asked for, and sure enough, I got the tune "Angel of the Morning." There's been a few people who have done it. I can't remember who the original singer was. Juice Newton was the one I found when I looked it up. That's the song. That song came into my head, and I knew that they'd put it there. It was in my memory banks, but I hadn't thought of it for years, and it just happened that years ago when I used to play guitar in a band, that was one of the songs that we used to play. I remember learning it, and but I, sort of forgotten about it. Obviously, it was in my memory, but not something that I would call to mind, and I hadn't called to mind for or heard for years and years and years. And I've kind of felt, well, that was, that had to be a sign. But later on, another, as I said, they asked me to write about my experiences that I'd had through my life. Not just, well, part of it was because I denied my own, these signs that I'd had all my life, my own experiences. I just dismissed. It's the reason. It's not just for me. It's for other people to perhaps consider. Well, there is something in this, and perhaps relate to their own experiences. But there was one experience that I'd had that I'd completely and absolutely forgotten about because it had been so long since it had happened, and it just floated up into my mind, and that's what it felt like. It just floated up, and I hadn't tried to recall it. It just came to mind, and it was an extraordinary experience that happened. Well, I think it must have been the mid '80s. It was even before, before I'd had these readings where this is stuff that had gone. I was visiting my sister-in-law at the time and her husband, my wife's brother, and my sister-in-law's auntie was staying with her. I'd never met the woman. I didn't know anything about her other than that she'd been on holiday in Canada, I think it was. And anyway, I'd gone round there to visit my brother-in-law and his wife for the evening, and it just happened that her sister-in-law was back from Canada, and she was staying there. That's as much as I knew. I didn't know anything about the woman. Her name was Sue, as it turned out, but that's all I knew. Anyway, we went there. It was this time I'm still 22 or something like that. And we had a conversation, pleasant evening. But the conversation came around to this sort of thing, sort of, because even then, although I hadn't got into it to the degree that I had later on, I was still interested in spiritualism and stuff. That had appealed to me. And the conversation came around to that sort of thing. And I remember my sister-in-law saying to her auntie, tell him about, it was her son as it happened. And anyway, we sat down and she pulled in, she opened her handbag and she pulled out this letter, and she'd explained to me that she'd been to Canada, and the reason she'd gone to Canada because she sold her house, which was local to where I lived, because her husband had died recently, but prior to that, 6 months prior to that, her 18-year-old son had been killed in Northern Ireland. He was in the army and he was killed by a sniper's bullet. And I didn't know any of this, so it sort of took me by surprise. But she'd been to, very similar thing really. She just had to get away from everything, sold up, and she went to Canada for a while. And while she was in Canada, the people she was staying with, they booked to see a medium. They were going to, and she went along with them just to keep them company. She didn't have a reading booked or anything like that. She just went along because it coincided with her visit and they were going. Anyway, she told me that when she got there, this medium, she wasn't interested in seeing the people that were booked in. She wanted to see her. She said that, and then she had this letter that she pulled out of her handbag. And the reason she wanted to see her, she said, it's your son. I mean, this is thousands of miles away. This woman has never met her before, knows nothing about any of this. And this letter was, I can't remember if she wrote it was automatic writing where it was written through the medium, or if it was recorded as she was writing it. I can't remember. But anyway, this was the letter, and the letter was from her son. Now this is this woman's son we're talking about. It's not some third party. It's not the sort of thing you're going to make up. And it was her son who couldn't go on because he'd been killed, instantly, basically. Same thing, he wasn't ready to go on. He couldn't go on until he spoken to his mother. He had to speak to his mother before he could go on into the higher dimensions. He was kind of caught between realms, and the whole of this letter was him talking intimately to his mother about what had happened and the situation with his dad who passed on, and I was sat there shaking. I was absolutely, I mean, like I say, this was a very powerful experience. I'd never known anything like this before, and I knew that couldn't have been. This woman couldn't be making this up. Who would make such a thing up about their own family? You know, no one would. I just knew that this had to be real. Like I said, I was literally shaking. I was literally shaking with it. But when this memory had surfaced, it had been so long since that had occurred that I'd actually forgotten it. You know, it just, and I knew that memory had been provoked in order, because they said to me in the book that, you know, when we spoke about it in the next time we spoke on the board, they said, wasn't that what really set you on your journey? Although there had been other things, hadn't that been what really? And it was, because I knew that, you know, that was real. That was real. That woman was, you know, she was grieving. I mean, how any mother would grieve for their son, you know. You know, she wouldn't make that up, and it was I don't remember all the contents of the letter, but I do remember it was intimate, and you know, it was very, very moving. You know, it was a very moving thing, but it was like there was a kindness involved in it. You know, there was love. You know, there was love that these events had occurred in order to help Sue, the woman who'd lost her son, you know, give her some comfort, and to enable her son to go. I mean, I'd read a lot of books, Life After Life, and especially nowadays where there's so much on the net, you know, sort of life after death experiences. There's even sort of organisations where people can go and report and record there. And you'll find all those people's, they're all individual people's afterlife experiences. They do follow a theme, you know, they do tend to follow a theme. There is, there are, and it does come down to that there is love, and that, you know, often when people can't go on because of, you know, circumstances, or someone's been lost tragically, suddenly, they can't go on because it's, you know, they don't even, in a lot of cases, don't even realise that they are dead, you know, because they're still alive. How can they be dead? And so they're trapped in, and, you know, these things occur in order for, you know, things to get put right, really. And that was another experience that, you know, made me, for me, was evidence. You know, that was, for me, was evidence. I mean, and I don't think that these things can be proved to anyone externally. I think we all have to have our own. But there is, the thing about it is that, you know, seeking you shall find. If you are sincere and your intention is pure, then you will get answers. You know, this has been proven over and over and over again to me. And it is so important because it's, as the angels say, you know, the inevitable occurs for all of us. And they want us to know this stuff because too many people pass on to the next dimension completely unprepared. We're not prepared for what comes next, when really this life is a preparation for the afterlife. And it's, you know, some of the, you know, we need to, you know, we need to at least consider some of this stuff. And, you know, it affects how we live as well. You know, it's not, I'm not a saint. It's not about being a saint. It's just about understanding how life works. And, you know, if we live in accordance with natural laws, in harmony with, you know, with each other, and you know, we can, life doesn't need, we don't, there's a lot, this is, from my point of view, this is important to me, is that, you know, I see so much unnecessary suffering in the world because of the way we live. You know, we don't live in accordance, you know, to natural laws, and if we did, life would be a lot easier. We wouldn't have so much suffering, we wouldn't have so much illness and disease and that kind of thing. So, you know, that's, for me, this is why it's important for me to carry on with this work and to do it. But I had another experience as well, and it was quite It was quite a dark. So when I was young, in my 20s, so I was in bands, and I sort of had lived a bit of the rock and roll lifestyle to a certain extent. And anyway, one evening, a group of us were visiting a friend of mine. And this guy at the time, he was a prospect for the Hells Angels, or he had been. So that's the kind of sort of environment it was. It wasn't, it wasn't. But there's no judgment or anything. We're all part of the same thing, and it's all about love. All this, we all just playing a part, really. Anyway, this, I only say this because I was, I wasn't involved in any sort of churchy type thing or religious type thing. I was very grounded in, what real world type life, what different people and, this very broad perspective on life. Anyway, this chap's wife, she was, it was at the time it's called bipolar now. I know they call it bipolar now, but it was manic depression they called it at the time. And she was undiagnosed actually at this point, and she kind of was, in a bad way, really. Anyway, there'd been a group of us. We were round there, but he wasn't in. We were all waiting for him to come back, and she was getting a bit upset because we were there to see him and not her, kind of thing, And we were all sat on a sort of big corner settee, and she started getting upset with people. And she was working her way around, and I felt that it was going to be my turn in a minute. So, I was looking for reasons to make excuses to take my leave. And I said to my wife at the time, I said, just go to the bathroom and we'll make a move, shall we? So, yeah, okay. So, anyway, I go up to the bathroom. I come back down the stairs. As I'm walking down the stairs, I had the most awful feeling. I didn't know what it was. I was quite shocked, but I just didn't know what it was or anything. And again, I sort of dismissed it, and off we went. And we had a lodger living with us at the time, and I said to her about it. She was familiar with this couple, and I said to her, they hadn't lived in this house for very long either at the time. And I said to her, this awful feeling I had, coming down the stairs. And she looked at me and she said, well, you're bound to feel like that when you know someone's been murdered in a house, aren't you? And I swear that I had no idea whatsoever that anything had occurred in that place. And so my jaw was on the deck. Obviously, what are you talking about? And he said, did you see the guy killed his girlfriend in there? I said, I didn't know. Well, it turned out that there had been a murder in there, and the woman was stabbed to death on the stairs. So again, it's like, how could I deny that I've got this? And this is what the angel said to me in the beginning of our conversation. As you said, when it was quite formal to start with, they did sort of ask me, have you known something was going to happen before it happened? And they explained to me that I'm an empath, or that I'm clairsentient. And this is why it was just good for me writing these experiences down, is hopefully it will be for other people, because it made me accept that I have these abilities, which I really think we all have in some shape or form, and we don't develop them perhaps or something. But
do you think you have this ability because you're open to it, and because you're seeking, and because you're trying to find the answers, and therefore it's open like a pathway for you to have a communication?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that's possibly part of it, and I think the communication with the angels is because they did say to me that the fact that you're not interested in talking to spirits. I mean, most people get into spiritualism or this kind of thing looking to contact the other side and get messages, and where I never really was. It didn't really appeal to me that much. It was interesting up to a point, but I was much more interested in, like I say, the implications of it and what the, one question leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. So I always have been, trying to get, I suppose it leads you into the higher realms. I suppose that's kind of what it's like. It's, the higher levels of consciousness. So, but I think that we all have these abilities in some shape or form, and it's as I understand it now, it's all consciousness. We have this consciousness, and there's kind of levels of consciousness, and we tend to, while we're in the physical dimension, we tend to externalize everything and see. We have what I tend to call a 3D consciousness that we focus on what our five senses tell us, and anything outside of that cannot possibly be real. But I've learned that that's not the case, and we all have this potential to develop our consciousness beyond our physical senses. And I think belief is a vital part of it. And when I finished writing the book, I said to the angels, because I kept saying to them, I don't understand why it's not all about me. All this, what we're talking about, affects all of us. It's it's universal, and I said, it kept surprising me why they want. And they said, no, it is about you. You need to, for those reasons, you need to understand it and accept your own ability and belief. But also, it's true for everyone. It is true for everyone. And hopefully, my experiences might spur other people on to, as they say, it's planting seeds. It's certainly not about converting anyone to anything. It really isn't. It's really to plant seeds that others may take an interest and look beyond the physical realm, because the inevitable is going to occur to all of us, and none of us know when. And so it's not that you have to live and breathe it 24 hours a day, but it is something worth. And the thing about it as well is it is life expanding. It really is life expanding. It's, life takes on a much bigger perspective, and the implications of the truth of all this, it has enormous ramifications for our lives. Life is much more than we're aware of it in our normal state of consciousness, and we are very highly created beings. We are created way beyond what we're aware of, and this is just this is like a step on the journey, and it's for everyone. It's not exclusive to me or anyone. We're all part of the same thing, and we're all on this. I did say to the angels that human evolution is the evolution of humanity, the evolution of consciousness. And they were emphatic. Yes, that is it. And this is the, part of the reason we're here, experiencing all this. And it's, you may notice that some people, they're the same when they're 75 as they were when they were 15. Basically, they haven't gone beyond, Whereas, when we direct our consciousness, when we want to learn, again, it's all about intention and stuff. It's limitless. There are no limits to anything. And I said when I finished the book, would you, if no one reads anything else apart from the back cover, would you say something that people can get from you, so that your message gets across? Because I'm conscious that it's all me. When I would like you to say something, it's either in the introduction or on the back cover, but it's about belief. They said, that's what they said, belief. That says everything. Believe in yourself, believe in angels, and believe in the universe. I mean, that's I tend to say God, but whether you call it the universe or the creator or prime source, it makes no difference. We're talking about the ineffable, that which is indescribable. There are no words for. So, but I always had and I discussed it with them. I said that as far as I'm concerned, that belief, it was, I look for words within words, and within the word belief is the word lie. So you can believe anything, and it doesn't necessarily make it true. And I've kind of always felt like that, which is what I said to them. They said, but it is true for you all the time you believe it. Well, and it sort of, that kind of struck me quite, the penny really dropped with that, because it's true. If you believe something, then that is your that is your truth, isn't it? That is your, and that explains as well why people have different. When you hear these people's near-death experiences and things, why they're all different, because you get what you believe. If you are, for example, a Christian, or whatever your belief is reflected in your experience. So if you pass on with, that you believe that you're going to go to the pearly gates and be let in by St. Peter, and you're going to be judged, and you're going to be, that is the experience that you're likely to have, because that is your belief system. It's this consciousness creates reality thing, and this is why I say about the implications are so important, because it works just the same during our earthly experience. We, what we believe, we experience. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the American philosopher, a quote from him was, he said that life is belief expressed, and it's very true. It's very true. It really, literally is what you believe, and we are all by the time we're 7 years old, up to the age of 7 years old, our brains work in a certain way that we're basically recording all the time, not really thinking much before we're 7. So we're recording, and everything that is very much along the lines of a computer. By what we observe as young children, we are converting into program, like computer code, into our, like, show me the hand that rocks the cradle and I'll show you the man. That's what that means. It's, whatever you're programmed by, whatever your experiences are as a youngster, you're programmed by it. And as an adult, a huge percentage of your thoughts and actions are still a result of this programming that you took on board when you were young. So this is, so the beliefs that we have, we carry with us for a lifetime. But we can change these things. It's only there until it's true for us until we can change our beliefs. So, be open-minded. Learn these things. And accept whatever you want to believe. That's the important thing. It's not. You don't need to take on board what someone else tells you to think. And that's, there's something else in it. Sort of. The vast majority of what's in our heads has been put there by someone else, and we all kind of live like that, sort of being like herd animals, human beings similar to herd animals, that we, go along with what the majority do. But we don't need to, we don't need to. We can think for ourselves, and I would always encourage anyone to look for your own answers. I'm not saying, there's a lot of beautiful things in all religions, and I honestly believe that all religions contain the truth, at least in part. So I'm not knocking anyone's religion or belief system at all. I'm really not. But I just would encourage people to consider that there is life beyond the physical. I used to joke with Trudy while we were doing the angel board and recording and transcribing and writing these things, that I was 56 before I met my invisible friend. Because that's how it came. It became a friendship. I love those angels wholeheartedly. They were, it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience, and they are real, and we all have them, and we all have the ability to connect with them. And ask for signs, and you will get them. Whether it's feathers, or it's repeating numbers, or there's songs in your head, finding pennies, or just things that seem too much to be much of a thing to be a coincidence, but they do stress, because of the law of free will, we have to ask. They can't intervene. They will not intervene. They're not allowed. We have to have our own free will to go our own way, and that's why there isn't any, there's no, we're not forced into anything. It's free will. But I also believe that we're kind of hardwired to seek out truth, and and the thing about truth as well is it kind of resonates in your heart. It kind of you can feel something is true when you experience it. You kind of feel it, and it does come down to that. It does come down to intuition and very much feeling. Feeling is very important in these things, but so is belief. As they stated, belief is, because that is how it works. You do literally, and they emphasised it to me, that this couldn't have happened had you not believed. Had you not believed in it. And I always think, I know very little about computers, but I did do a little bit of Java programming one time, and I can remember, I think it's the Boolean they call it, whether you is something true or false, yes or no, and it's kind of like that. It's true whatever you believe. If it doesn't happen for you because you don't believe in it, then that is your truth. We kind of set our own parameters. It's.
Can I ask about your experience with the angels, and who are they? So, are they your angels? Are they people that have passed on from this physical world? Who are they, and how did they describe themselves for you?
Well, I think there's a kind of different levels of it. There, we do all have a guardian angel that we're assigned to, and it's with us throughout life. And that, what we call guardian angels, it's my understanding is, yes, they have lived this physical experience, and they do understand the things that we go through, and they can relate to us. So yes, in that sense, so they could be considered to be angels as well. But you also get the angelic realm, which this came from, and they describe themselves as beings of light. And it's my understanding that no, they're like a different form of evolution. They are not human. They are very human-esque. But you can sort of tell, I think, in the conversations that they're not. They understand, and they are very human. But you can tell sometimes that they're not quite. It's almost a bit like speaking to someone who speaks a foreign language. They're saying something, but they don't actually quite know. They're not quite meaning what they're putting across. And I think so sometimes there would be like, we get our wires crossed. But anyway, no, I think they are beings of light from the angelic realm, which is like a higher spiritual realm, and they've never left the sort of creator kind of thing. Where I think it's just sort of different lines of evolution. And they did, when I asked them about this, they said that they were archangels, which they weren't. They were like the sort of rank and file angels, as they sort of put it, really. Although they said that they do work with.
So I think you mentioned you mentioned something in the book about hierarchy. So is there hierarchy in some side?
I don't think so in the way that we understand it. I don't think it's not the way we would have a hierarchy. However, I think there are. I think as we evolve, we do go to higher realms because it's higher levels of understanding. Where it's a bit like you wouldn't put a 5-year-old into university. You have to learn each stage before you're ready for that. So I think if there is anything, it's a kind of meritocracy. You get there to the higher realms as you attain that level of development. you know. Although I think essentially we have, you know, we've got that, as we was talking earlier of the inner being. There is an aspect of us that is already perfected, and we're kind of returning to it, I think, through experience and through learning, through evolving.
So interesting talking to you. I mean, it's really opened my mind, I suppose, in some respects, because, you know, coming into a conversation like this, you don't really know. And you know, my wife has had some experiences. She likes to go to see a medium, and some of those mediums have come back and they've explained to us exactly what's about to happen in the next number of years. And, you know, I'll give you one example, which was she went to see a medium, and she hadn't communicated to almost anybody that she was pregnant. And it's before we were ready to tell anybody. Actually, I don't think I've really told many people this story, actually. But she went to a medium, and that medium wouldn't have known. She didn't have any rings on. She didn't have a name. She wouldn't have known anything. But she had her half an hour with her, and she could have been a London party girl. She could have been anyone. She wouldn't have known whether she's married or anything like that. And almost one of the first things she came out with, she said, "Are you planning to have a baby? Are you thinking about having a family now?" And my wife didn't want to give anything away, and she said, "Oh, I'm not really sure about that." And the medium was basically saying, "You're pregnant," and she said, "If you're not pregnant now, I'm certain you're going to be pregnant really soon." And she said, "You're going to have a baby this year. So if you don't know anything about it, you need to go and get checked." And of course, my wife had only just found out a few days before that she was pregnant, because we hadn't communicated to anybody. And she went there with our family, and I think with her mum. No, sorry, it was my mum. She then went there with my mum, and my mum had only just found out. It was literally 2 or 3 people that knew. And then and she wouldn't have even known that those 2 people were connected in it either. That she would have been my mother, her mum-in-law. And when she sat down, she said, "Do you know that lady?" And my mum said, "Yeah." She goes, "She's pregnant. She needs to go and get checked now, because she doesn't seem like she knows, and she's definitely pregnant." And I think that really speaks quite loudly to me, because I believe in this energy. There's some sort of energy, and I know my wife believes in it somewhere, where there are mediums, there are people that are able to connect to something. And there's some evidences, things like that people wouldn't know. There's no way that they would know that. There's no way they could look it up, because nobody knew that information. So there's definitely things that you've touched on today, which, you know, I'm certainly open to. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this. So there's just so much evidence, and I think that's comes back nicely to the title of your books. There's evidence of a higher realm. We can't prove it, but there's evidence. There is these signs which you've seen.
Well, this is you know, I think it's very interesting that, you know, there's so much about us that most of what we actually are is non-physical. You know, our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts, none of it is physical, and yet that's really how we identify ourselves with what we are. So it's not such a great leap, I don't think, to go beyond the physical senses. But one of the things that the angels did ask me to look into, and I must admit, I'm certainly no expert on it. I have sort of tried to understand it more, and it connects with what you were saying there about, you know, how do people know these things? I mean, like you say, there's no way that lady could have known about your wife, and
No
like
way.
I was mentioned about, you know, that lady whose son had passed away, and you know, these things are unexplainable. But they're obviously real, because, you know, they relate to facts as we understand them. And the angel said to me about, would I look into the Akashic records, which is kind of like the book of life as described in the Bible. You know, this notion that I think the internet seems to be such a great way to relate these things. Like, you know, I mean, all human knowledge is available on the internet, and it's kind of like that. It's you know, there seems to be within, you know, intrinsically within everything, there seems to be this intelligence that we can connect to somehow. And I don't know how it works. I really have no idea but it does work. And it's like that somehow. It's like a radio or something. We can tune into this particular frequency and get that. We can get that station, and it seems to be some people were able to, connect to the spirit beings, and there is something, and the thing about it as well is it's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing. There is no negativity. There is no thou shalt nots, and
and that's the distinction you're trying to make, really, between religion and this spiritual consciousness, which is actually, it's very separate from those things,
very much,
and
so,
it's not
yeah.
doesn't have the levels of rules. What you're saying is that it's almost about our soul and our spirit. There is something at a very fundamental level that exists.
Absolutely.
And then when we pass from this world, we go somewhere.
Yes.
And that's why I think you're making a very clear distinction, that this isn't a religious.
No, that's right. I think
in any way.
Heaven is a state of consciousness, not a place. And as I say, I really don't want to knock anyone's belief system or anyone's religion. There's a lot of beautiful things in all of them. There really is. But it's spirituality without spiritual but not religious is the way I sort of look at it as, really. And it's and like I say, there's people say, well, what about this and what about that, and we have a tendency to go to the extreme when we question these things, but there are natural laws, and cause and effect is one of them, so sometimes known as the law of attraction. Because life is all one, we are all part of the one thing. So therefore, what we do or don't do for each other, we do or don't do for ourselves. And there's no escaping natural law. What you get back what you give out. You can't hurt someone else without hurting yourself. There might not be it might not be an instant thing, but no one escapes cosmic laws. So it's okay. It's okay. We don't need to punish each other. And these things that we sometimes see that life is punishing us, or there are opportunities for growth, really. We're not being punished. That's the point. It's just a repercussion of, like, if you go too fast and you get caught for speeding, well, you can't complain. You're going to get, if you get a speeding fine. It's very similar. It's the same law that we fall foul of is there to protect us in life, and it's the same with spiritual laws. That so those that if we endure something or suffer because of our own actions, then okay, we have to balance the scales, but there's always opportunity to go beyond that. We're not held back.
And you're talking about a balance here, a balance in your life. Because I don't think you're talking about karma, or are you talking about karma? Are you talking about if something negative happens, or you do something negative to someone else, it's in some ways it will come back to you? Are we talking about that? Or are we talking about there being a natural balance to your life?
There is a natural balance, but there is consequences to your actions. That's what I mean. There are consequences to your actions. No one escapes their own actions, good or bad. But that's why I say there's a way to live. That's I guess really the point of this. Beyond establishing the fact that there is an afterlife, there is also a way to live, and if we live in harmony with natural laws and things, then we can sidestep a lot of the suffering that we very often do endure. So that's something I like to, because people will always, when you say, well, there's no religion, and well, you can do what you like, then can you? No, it's not that you can do what you like. It's just there's always consequences to our actions, always, and don't have to worry about punishing people, because life itself will establish that balance. I'm not saying that people that commit, terrible crimes they need to be taken out of society, obviously, but for example, the death penalty, I'm sure people got different views on that, but all we're doing is we're pushing those people into the next world for them to deal with. you know, because people don't die; those souls just get shoved into the next world. And I mentioned earlier on Flint. I can't remember his name. The medium, and one of his people that came through from the other side to his séance was the was it Judge Bean? He was a hanging judge. Anyway, he was responsible for sentencing a lot of people to death, and he was very keen on coming through. And this séance was recorded in while we still had the death penalty in this country, so 62 or something like that. And he was pleading for the death penalty to be repealed because he'd seen the consequences from the other side. He said, what happens is all you do is those people that they've committed heinous crimes and they do need to be dealt with, but by killing them, all we're doing is we're putting them into that world, making them even angrier. And what they're doing is they're loitering around. As I say, not everyone passes over. They hang around and they're impressing themselves upon vulnerable people in this world to commit the same acts as they did when they were in this world. So, this is where it all comes back to love in the end. This is the conclusion of all of it. And this is nothing new. This is not a new story, but it really is true that love is the answer. This is what we're here to learn about, to understand and to act, is love. Love is everything. One of my favourite lines in the book was we were talking about extremes, whatever they are. I've always believed everything in moderation is fine. And the angel said that nothing in excess is good unless it's an excess of love, which to me was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. and it is so true, that love is the answer to everything.
Wow. It's been unbelievable talking with you about this subject. I'd almost think, maybe in many years' time we might look back on this conversation and probably have a different view in 20, 30 years' time, perhaps, I don't know. But would you call this, because this isn't mainstream thinking right now, but do you think in time this consciousness will become mainstream thinking? Do you think there's going to be so many coincidences, especially with the internet where information gets sped up? Obviously this conversation will be uploaded onto YouTube and therefore anyone globally can access it. So, and of course this all compounds. There's going to be lots more people talking about it. I know there's lots more YouTubes, there's lots more podcasts, there's more people that have the ability to now communicate something like this. So do you think this level of thinking is going to become more mainstream as time goes on? There's going to be a consciousness that is more aligned?
I absolutely do. I really feel that we're in a period of time where our consciousness, or the evolution of our consciousness, is speeding up, and I think it has to. I think if we look at the world and what we're doing to it and what goes on in the world, it's obvious that we cannot continue. We cannot continue carrying on like we've always carried on. We need to we need to go beyond that. And it's nothing of this is new in some ways. It all goes back thousands of years to as far as we recorded history. But at the same time, we're at the point now where it's a kind of crisis point that we need to, we can't just pay lip service to this sort of stuff anymore. We have to, be it. We have to, and like I say, it's all natural law. And I mentioned earlier the Silver Birch, the teachings of Silver Birch, and it's a philosophy that's there for the masses. It's, I'd like to sort of talk about that more perhaps next time if we do it again. But this is the thing. This is for everyone. It's totally inclusive. There's no one excluded from anything, regardless of colour, creed, race, dogma, or anything. This is. To quote Silver Birch, the greatest service of all, above any philosophy or any religion or anything else, is service to others. That is the it's the greatest philosophy there is to, service to others. All of us just look after each other. It's, it's not difficult. There's, when we see things in a different light, it's obvious. It becomes obvious. It's just, putting vested interests aside. And I get accused of talking about communism, but it's, for one thing, the world's never seen communism. What has been communism has been cruelly implemented, but it's not a political thing anyway. It's about, the greater good. It's, for the greater good of everyone, not some, or those at the top, or it's the greater good. And it really does come back to that one word, love, not the Hollywood version. Just live in accordance with, do no harm. That's all. Just do no harm. There only needs to be one law: do no harm. Just do no harm, and also, it helps if we can be honest with ourselves. We I think a lot of time we feel, we feel these things instinctively, but because of social pressures and fear of ridicule and all the rest of it, we tend to suppress it or not want to. But it's surprising that once you do sort of open up about these things and the experiences you have, you find that other people do as well, and it's and they're keen to talk about it. So don't be afraid to. I'm fortunate in that respect. I don't really care what other people think about me, because I'm passionate about it, because I found it to be true, and it's helped me so much. I know what it's like to be, sort of struggling in life, and I know what it's like to be in pain emotionally, and I know what it's like when you lose a loved one and stuff, and to find something that's not just cold comfort, but something that you can kind of hang your hat on, really. So I like to call it spirituality you can take to the bank. And that's, and as the inevitable will occur to all of us at some point, why not consider it and make our own mind up about it? That's my message, really.
When you look back on all of your experiences and the journey of writing the book and communicating with angels, how do you feel about it now? What do you think about that experience that you've been on?
Well, I think it's extraordinary. I think it's particularly the experience with the angels. That is the most extraordinary experience I've ever had. So I wasn't as aware of sort of spirituality and things that people have experienced as I was. I didn't expect to have something that direct myself. I really didn't expect to have something that direct myself, and it was. I feel really honoured and privileged and thrilled. But it's the point is, it's not just me. This is for all of us. We all have angels. They all want us to get in contact with them. They all, if you look for them, they will show you. They will show you, and things come about, and you might think, well, that would have happened anyway. But they will not interfere. That's their message. You have to ask for permission. But it is extraordinary, and it's given me a lot of peace. It's given me a lot of understanding about life and peace of mind, and you kind of take it for granted after a while. You sort of forget that other people don't see things the way you do and stuff. But it gives you a much broader perspective on life, and that's important as well, because what might be troubling you to a great degree, at one time in your life, when you see it from a larger perspective, it's you realise, oh, well, it's not, that's nothing to get worked up about, and also you get to the point where you also understand that everything is all right, really. It's if you can just, my expression is to say, let go and let God. It's okay. It's kind of like it'll all work out. It'll all work out, and it does. I mean, I was literally at the point where I wrote that book. I really was at a point of physical and mental breakdown. I was it was almost, and I'm certain that had I have not gone and stayed with Trudy and wrote book and had I was was really looked after. I used to spend every day walking around. The angels used to say to me, "Get out in nature, Mother," and this is a very important message too. Mother Nature is healing, because I mean, to me, nature is God. I mean, just look at it; it's just absolutely magnificent, and the intelligence within it, and the beauty. And I mean, even if you take if you take a caterpillar, it just turns into a soup and becomes a moth, a butterfly. It's just, I mean, it's just miraculous, isn't it? It's just ponder on that for a while. Just the miracle of life. It just, and the miracle of yourself. Ponder. You don't even know. We don't even understand what makes our heart beat. We don't understand where our body temperature comes from. We've got 50 trillion cells in our body or more, each with its own set of organs, complete set of organs that we have. Every individual cell has all those. This miraculous thing that allows us to take food into our mouth, and our body digests it and converts the chemicals into our own individual cells. We are all miracles. We don't have to look far for evidence. I always say, just look into the mirror, and it's there. It's already there. You just have to let go of the conditioning, really, and be broad-minded and have faith. Like the angels say, belief is everything. Believe in yourself, believe in angels, and believe in the universe.
So now, just to sort of finish off where we started in some respects, and where we started was trying to answer the question: is there another world? Does something happen after we pass on? And you presented a lot of evidence, and there's lots of evidence in your book. What do you now believe? Which is, there's this physical world, and then we go to some sort of spiritual world. And is there more? And is this world, is this infinite for us? So is this, because I know, sometimes when you think about it, you think, God, if this is it, this is everything, this physical world is everything, that's incredibly depressing, that's incredibly sad. But if there's more, that level of hope that can give people, I think, is profound, really. So what's your view now on what happens?
Well, it's my understanding that we are all eternal souls. That's what we are. We are not physical beings. We're having that experience as a human being, but we are eternal souls. We are spiritual beings. We have already. There's never been a time when we haven't been, and we will always be. And it's not that it's somewhere else. It's all one now. It's all just different phases and levels of consciousness. So and for all the hardship and suffering that there is in this world, there's a lot of beauty. There's a lot of magnificence. We wouldn't be here if we didn't want to be. We're not here as punishment. We're here because we wanted to be here. We're here for a reason. It's for our own development. So enjoy it as well. Even the down stuff. Try and see the perfection in everything. I know it sounds, sort of impossible, but there's always a silver lining. There is, and you are loved. There is something that loves you beyond our ability to understand. And we are eternal beings. We go on. We will always be, and our progression never ends. We never get to a point where, right, that's it now. It's eternal. So, live in the moment and enjoy your life, and accept that there is more, and we're not separate from it now. It's still there. It's just on a different frequency, but we're not separate from it. We're not separate from each other, and it's all about love.
I think that's perfect. We are eternal souls.
We are. That is the truth. That really is the truth of what we are. We're our bodies and our minds is just something we have. It's not who we are. We are this awareness, this consciousness, and the nature of the source that we come from, that we're extensions of, is pure love. It is pure love. It's such an overused word that it's difficult to convey how deep that is, but that is the essence of everything, is love. And just bear that in mind always, and communicate. Talk with your angels, look for your signs, ask for the signs, look for your feathers, look for the coins that suddenly appear, and don't be like I was and dismiss everything. Just accept it, and because it's all a reflection. Everything that is in your objective experience is a reflection of your internal mind, your thoughts and beliefs. It's like a screen. We're in like the best sort of 3D IMAX screen you could ever be in, and it's okay. It's okay to believe in all this, and you'll see everything reflected back to you. You'll see it. It's not just. I used to get, and there's a lot in the book about the messages. I mentioned that there was this period where these sort of birds were dropping out of the sky, and there was this sort of thing with me and birds that was going on. But I realised it's not just that; it's everything that you experience. Sometimes you might look at a billboard or an advertising slogan, and that slogan might just say something to you, even though it's relating to OXO or something. That might just be the thing you need to hear about something that's on your mind at the moment. It kind of all works in mysterious ways, and those ways are not our ways. So it's just be open-minded and have faith.
Well, thank you so much for coming in today. Good luck with the book, and I think that's been such an interesting conversation. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Digger.